So Apple from year to date has been in a very healthy uptrend. We have seen the occasional pullback here. It's been very tame in comparison, and it's just basically been an uptrend since the start of the year. If we look at the bell curves with the 500 look back period, we are pushing into the 0.1% range. Now that is technically overextended, but it's actually not for a growth stock during dare I say, a bull market. So generally in bullish phases of market behavior, we will see growth stocks like Apple consistently push into the 0.1% range. That shows a healthy uptrend that is being supported and sustained by investors. Pullback can happen, and it does happen, as you see here, but then it will generally resume back into that 0.1% range. We can see this has been true for Apple for most of history. During healthy uptrends, it does remain within the 0.1% range, with pullbacks into the 13% range at most, and then followed by a push back into the 0.1% range. All of the downturns have been during catalyst-based events. So we are now reapproaching that normal kind of uptrend behavior that we expect to see with growth stocks, which is fantastic. Congratulations to everybody who bought down here. And so, yeah, that is where we're at. If we look at the weekly perspective on Apple, we do have some a lot of support / resistance around this 176, 175 range. You can see all the candles just sort of conglomerating there, with our all-time high currently resting at around 183, which we are not quite there yet, but I think we will get it and surpass it, and I'll explain why in a second. So I do expect, because we are a little bit overextended and we are very close to the all-time highs, which generally kind of scares some people because people see all-time highs as technical resistance. So we do generally see a little bit of a pullback before breaching the all-time highs. We did see that with Nvidia. Got a little scared when it got close, and then earnings were the push for it to kind of get over that resistance. So I do expect this to pull back towards 176. It is ultimately bullish. I am not overly bearish, but I do believe the market will at least pull back next week, and I think Apple may get dragged down with it, just as a healthy pullback. I will be setting my alert at 176 because from there I believe that we will see a bounce back to all-time highs. But let me just show you something else that I am seeing. So if we look at the Z-score profile, and for, oops, that's not what I want. For those of you who are not familiar, Z-score just measures the distance of a stock from its mean. And the reason I tend to like profiling stocks with Z-score, I did this a lot in 2021. It's because when we are approaching all-time highs, people generally view all-time highs as, it breaks through resistance. There's no resistance anymore. So it will just go straight up, but that's actually not true. If we look at the stock in terms of Z-score, we can actually see that there is resistance, and we can actually plot that out. So you're going to see what I mean right here. This is the Z-score profile of Apple since year to date, right? We are currently right here at 184. Our actual high resistance is around 216. And if we look at the Apple's highs from a Z-score perspective, we can see that the high resistance is actually at 239, right? So what does that correspond to in price? Well, we can actually calculate what that corresponds to in price. If we do a conversion of Z-score to price, we'll start with this immediate resistance here at 215. So we'll put in a Z-score of 215. We'll see what happens with our price, which is right down here. It's just going to take a second to think about what that is, and you'll see 185. So this resistance, which we hit this year at 2.15, is actually 185, which actually puts us into all-time high territory, right? So despite going into all-time highs, we still have resistance, right? When we look at things from a mathematical and mean perspective, there is always going to be resistance somewhere. It's not until Apple is able to push through 239 that there's just no resistance anywhere, that there's no math resistance or anything. So what would 239 correspond to as a price? Well, it's a good question. Let's take a look and see what that price would be. And it is 188. So that is very interesting. And why that is very interesting is because if we take a look at Apple's monthly targets, these are Apple's calculated monthly high and low targets. We see that the first high target starts at 188. The second high target starts at 190. To the downside, the first low target starts at 171, and the next low target starts at 169. So we can also take a look at what those low targets would be from a z-score perspective. So if we go down to 171, let's ask the indicator what that would be from a z-score perspective. It's just going to take a second to think about it. 171 would be a z-score of 1, which means that it would bring us back to this general area, which actually is um, not terrible, but you can see there is a ton of support. So there is just support kind of everywhere before we get there. So we have support here, 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 here. There's a ton of support that I would have to break down to get to that one, versus to the upside, our immediate resistance is here, then this, then this. And two of these resistances are in all-time high territory, right? So the path of least resistance for Apple is up, and that is why I'm personally going to be looking to long this. If we can retrace back to the 176, I'm going to set my alert for there. If we touch that, I'm going to be scaling into Apple leverage shares, AAPU. And yeah, I'm just going to ride it up, see how far it goes, because once it breaks through that all-time high level, it is going to go parabolic, because you're going to have people FOMOing in. Should be good momentum at that point. And yes, that is Apple. That's my analysis. That's what I'm watching. Safe trades to you all, and take care.